What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining me on another FCP Hero DIY. Today, we're working on a 1988 Porsche 911. Today on the Carrera behind me, we have quite a bit going on. As you can see, we have a slew of parts all available on fcphero.com. We're doing an engine out service on the vehicle, and with that comes a lot of DIYs that we're going to throw at it. These are all going to have their own video once the engine is out, so if you need to get to that point, be sure to check out that video first. It will be linked in the video description below. Today's DIY is going to focus slowly on doing a clutch and flywheel replacement. In front of us, one of the parts we have here is a clutch kit, which has your pressure plate, your new flywheel. This is an ASCO flywheel, a new Sachs clutch disc, and we're also going to be replacing some of the internal bits while we're at it as well. Typically wear items like this clutch fork, the guide tube, throwout bearing, all that good stuff. These clutches can last anywhere from 80 to 100,000 miles and even more. This car has 145,000 miles on it, just under 150, and we suspect it's still in the original clutch, and for the most part it still operates fairly well. However, it is old and almost 40 years old, so we're going to be covering how to replace it while also tackling a few other bits on the engine, which you can see in some of the other videos. But before we get started on that, let's take a look at some of the tools you're going to need for this job. For tools, these are pretty much what we're going to call the bare minimum to do the actual clutch job on this G50 3.2 liter combination. We have a pry bar, a small hammer and brass punch, 3/8 drive ratchet, 15 mil wrench. We have a 10 mil hex. We have a M12 triple square 6 mil hex. We have a 13 mil and a 10 mil socket, a torque wrench, and a paint pen. Now, with any job like this, especially one that's a bit involved, obviously we're doing this already with the engine out. If you're looking for tools on how to drop the engine and what you may need for that, be sure to check out that video as well on the channel. What I recommend is you watch the rest of this video through, see what we actually get into, what we do. Sometimes we add tools or we come up with solutions on the fly that may not be covered during the beginning of the video. So highly recommend you watch through before starting at home. But with that, let's go ahead and get started. We have our engine and transmission assembly on the table, my good people. And again, as we mentioned, we're doing a bunch of videos with this engine out. And the one that we're focusing on for this video is going to be the clutch. You could also take some of this if you want to do the starter as well while you have everything out, as we are going to be removing it. So let's start with that one, as this one has the odd hardware out of the other four, or out of the other three bolts that are holding this baby in. We had already undone the wiring when we dropped the engine and transmission originally. You can do that now. It's just a 13 mil and an 8 mil for the signal wire and your power wire to the back of the starter. Then obviously there's some factory zip ties here, factory zip ties. We're gonna snip those babies off, and that'll free up the reverse switch harness, which on our car was already broken. So we'll have to look into replacing that while we have everything apart. And then we'll just do that one and tuck this wiring just somewhere off to the back on the engine side of things, just out of our way. For the starter and one of the bolts that acts as the transmission bolt, we have these 10 mil nuts almost. They use a 10 mil hex. And so we're going to go in with an extended 10 mil hex socket just so we can crack these babies free. Typically, they're just nuts and they're going to leave the studs behind. Sometimes with corrosion, the studs can come out with it. So just be mindful of that. So we're going to take our extended 10 mil 3/8 drive ratchet. Make sure that hex bit is seated in all the way. And we're also going to pull the other 10 mil on the back side just so that we can remove the starter fully from the transmission and it's not in our way. All right, and then we can just work this big old starter off and set this baby to the side. While we have you here, let's take out this bottom 15. Again, this is technically on the passenger side of everything. If you're looking at the engine and trans as it would sit in the car. I'm just using a 15 mil wrench. You can use a socket as well. A shallow socket would work, but with the ribbing here on the transmission, sometimes, depending on what kind of tools you have, the sockets may be too big. So I find a 15 mil wrench a bit easier for this job. Pull that baby off. Now let's head over to the driver's side bank, and get the other two 15s off. We have this aftermarket exhaust, so these seat exchangers sit a little bit more forward and bigger, if you will, than the factory one. So this might not be so much of a problem for you if you're still running the factory exhaust. But we can still work around it. We get enough of a bite on the 15 that it's no problem. All right, now we have the bell housing bolts removed. We do still have our clutch fork guide tube, if you will, our pin that rolls through our transmission here. We're going to need to remove this in order to be able to pull the trans out. So we have two bolts here that we're dealing with. We have a 13 mil and we have a 10 mil. So let's pull the 13 first. We're going to thread our 13 bolt back in. We're going to pry this baby out. And there she is, my good people. We're going to set this baby to the side, and now we should be able to work our transmission off of our engine. So let's give that a shot. With our transmission out of the way now, we're going to continue removing the rest of our assembly here so we can get basically to the rear main seal, replace that baby, and then work our way backwards. This can now come out. We have a new one of these that is part of our clutch kit, so we're going to set this baby to the side. And we have a bunch of bolts holding on our gear ring here on the outside. These are all going to be 6mm hex bolts. We have 3, 3, and another 3, total of 9. Math is important. We're going to zap these out with our electric ratchet. To get the flywheel off, we are going to be using an M12 triple square. For this, honestly, I recommend just zapping them out. You can use a flywheel lock tool, or what I would probably end up doing or recommending is just very carefully using the stud that holds on our bell housing and just using that as a counter hold if you're going to do this by hand. Just be mindful, you don't want to put too much pressure on these and accidentally bend them or break them. But typically you can always use a transmission bolt to use as your counter hold, where they probably are on most vehicles that we do clutches on here. So we have 9 M12s. We're going to zap these babies out with our impact. Let's get it off the little dowel pin that's holding it in place. You'll see there's a small hole that is separate to the 9 bolt holes, and that's going to be for this little dowel pin here on our crankshaft. With all this old goodness off to the side, we're going to clean up the back of this casing a bit. This rear main seal wasn't horrendous. I've seen much worse, but it was certainly a little bit leaky, and that I'm sure is some of the top stuff leaking down as well. So we're going to take a minute to clean this out as best as possible before we go ahead and pull off this old rear main seal and replace it. You'll see on different cars, it really depends on what you're working on. Some of these can be set at different depths. This one is pretty much flush to the face of the casing. It's actually a little bit uneven, so this has probably been done at some point before. But we're going to go ahead and make sure that the new one goes in the same amount. All right, we're going to work on getting this rear main seal out next. Just going to use some screwdrivers to kind of act as my prying surface here. I'm going to lay the flathead underneath my other flathead, so I'm prying off of the flathead, you know what I mean? Just going to go in with a flathead and kind of work this baby out, grabbing that inner metal sleeve on the old rear main seal, not so much the, try not to mar the inside sealing surface. We're prying off of the outer edge here on the crank. It's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to seal on there. You just don't want to mar up the inside sealing surface on the inner or the outer portion of where the seal lives. So as long as you're not hurting that, you'll be fine. All right, we're going to clean this up a little bit as well, and then we'll get ready to install our new rear main seal. We're going to feed our new rear main seal in now that our work area is nice and clean. The goal here is to get this inner lip to seal around the outer part of the crankcase. You don't want to roll it over by accident. We're going to work one side in and then just kind of try to bring it the rest of the way around. It might take you a few tries just to get it seated properly. I'm just kind of giving it a little bit of help with my finger, and then once it's around the crank, it'll be nice and easy to move around. All right, now that we have it seated by hand, I just have it pretty much as evenly as possible. It's going to move around a bit once we start tapping it in. I'm going to use the back of a small brass punch. You can use the end of your extension if you were using one to get to this point in your job. Whatever you have, just to get it in nice and evenly. You want to work it around all the way, nice and evenly, Otherwise, you're gonna risk bending the seal, and then you're gonna have a bad time. And that, my good people, feels wonderful. It's nice and even all the way around. It's way more even than the old one was before we took it out. That's exactly what we want. Now with the rear main seal installed, we're gonna get our new flywheel and our new flywheel bolts and get those babies started by hand, line up this dowel, and then we'll show you how to torque them down. With everything nice and cleaned up, rear main seal in, we're gonna take our new flywheel. Again, we're gonna line up our smaller hole with the dowel here. Our new flywheel already has a new pilot bearing installed as well, which is really nice. On some of the older cars, they are a bolt on and off type of situation, which is also pretty nice to work with. Our old bolts came out nice and clean threads, so we're gonna install the new ones in the same way. We're gonna get these all started by hand first, then we're gonna grab our M12 and torque them pretty much in a crisscross pattern to 90 Newton meters. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so forth and so on. That way it buttons up nice and evenly to the back of our crank. Torque wrench, M12, set to 90 Newton meters. Basically what's gonna happen is you're gonna try to tighten these down, and more than likely you're just gonna end up spinning the engine over. So we need a counter hold. So for that, first thing I'm gonna do is grab a paint pen so that we can mark these as we torque them down. We can keep our order in place. Secondly, we're gonna grab a pry bar. This one might be too big, but we're gonna give it a shot. And we're just gonna get it into one of the teeth of the flywheel, seated nice and securely. That's gonna button up against our transmission bolt. And then we're gonna go ahead and torque them down. It's pretty good to have a second set of hands to help you hold this in place while you torque these down nice and quickly. We got Ethan counter holding for me. We have our M12 torque wrench set to 90 Newton meters. All right, with that, all 9 of our M12s are nice and torqued down. Again, 90 Newton meters, about 66.5 foot-pounds for those of you using foot-pounds. From here, we're gonna clean our surface up really nicely. I'm gonna use some brake clean and some shop towels. Make sure there's no grease or fingerprints or anything left behind on that, as that is what our clutch disc is gonna make contact with. Next, we're gonna steal the starter ring or the ring gear from the old pressure plate, so we can transfer it over to our new one. You can buy this ring separately, and we will link it below if you just want a new one. But this one's in really good shape. They don't typically corrode, and usually they're pretty easy to pop off. We're just gonna flip this baby upside down. Take a brass punch. The brass is very important. It's not gonna hurt the teeth on the ring gear. Kind of just get a nice bite on two teeth if you can. Just little taps. Well, hopefully yours are as easy as that, but that is really all there is to it. This is kind of like a little bit tapered, so it really shouldn't be on that tight. The ring gear does only go on one way. Obviously, if you're using the old one, it's easy to see the marks that are left behind from the hardware, so you obviously want that facing out. The inside also has a tapered edge, and that's going to be facing towards the pressure plate. So we're going to take our new pressure plate and then just line up the bolt holes with the pressure plate. I'm going to take some of the new hardware and just feed one in on the middle hole of each side. Then we'll use our brass punch to seat it all the way around. Alrighty, that looks great all the way around. And then obviously once we put this up against the whole sandwich assembly here and tighten everything down, there's going to be nowhere for the ring to go. But we want to make sure it's nice and flush. Next, we're going to work on the almost semi-final bit as far as this clutch and flywheel sandwich goes. And that's going to be our new throw-up bearing. We're going to get our new throw-up bearing situated onto our new pressure plate. We have a bunch of shims and washers, if you will, that come with this. And while it looks intimidating, it's pretty straightforward. This large cast one, and we'll call this a snap ring, are going to go on the inside. We have 2 of the tiniest, thinnest shims. These 2 are going to go onto the actual throw-up bearing. There's a small ledge that they're going to rest on, and you'll see there's a nice groove cut out for that snap ring at the end. So they all have a place. So these two shims, there's two of them here, are going to go on like so. Then we're going to take this tooth washer, we'll call it, with the bowing part up against the throwout bearing, so that it's kind of almost like acting like as if it's raising it up. Then we're going to flip this over carefully, holding on to the throwout bearing and trying to keep it attached to the forks as we flip it. All right, with our flywheel right side up, and you could obviously take this off and assemble the washers and the spring washer like this and then lay it on. You don't have to get crazy and flip it over like we did. We then have our next cast washer, if you will. One side is basically flat with a little alignment dowel. The other one has a bit of a beveled edge. That edge, or that rounded beveled edge, whatever you want to call it, is going to be facing up. So that's going to allow for the snap ring to go into place when we compress everything down. So there's a couple write-ups on how to do this. It's a little crazy and it requires quite a bit of force, maybe a second set of hands. I've seen people stand on the pressure plate to compress everything down enough to get the snap ring to pop in. What I'm going to do, and this is just my first try at this, is get everything lined up as best as possible, place that snap ring where I think it needs to go. I can almost get one edge of it started, almost. And then I'm just going to push down on this and see if with my thumbs I can get it to feed into its little groove on the throwout bearing. Okay. Halfway there. Okay. It's close. It's still sticking out a little bit on this side. There we go. Oh yeah, baby. Just some good old beef body weight. We've pushed down enough on the entire assembly to allow the snap ring to fall in between this larger cast washer and the throwout bearing. So I'm going to double check my work, just make sure everything looks nice and even. Take your time with this. The last thing you want to do is assemble this whole thing and have to go back and take it apart. So I'm going to double check my work here, and then we're going to grab our clutch disc and we're going to get ready to join the three things together. All right, we have our hardware. I'm going to go grab that. These are our 9 hex bolts that hold the pressure plate and clutch disc to the flywheel. We have our Sachs clutch disc. The flat side is going to be towards the flywheel. Obviously the spring plate side is going to go towards our gearbox. It's also labeled gearbox side, so pretty straightforward. It can really only go on one way. You know, this is how we want it. If you flipped it around, this would just literally bottom out against the flywheel. You would never get it to work, so no worries there. For the clutch tool alignment, what we're using here is just one that I actually had sitting on the shelf, but it's a 25 spline count, and it's just small enough to fit the inside of our pilot bearing. All right, with our pressure plate, clutch disc, and flywheel back into their sandwich form, their natural state, we are going to torque down these hex bolts. All right, before we torque down these 6mm hex down to 25 Newton meters, we're just gonna go across by hand and just start drawing these in a little bit with our ratchet. As we draw them in and get them a little bit more snugged up, you'll see the pressure plate starts to go in towards the flywheel, which is exactly what we want. So we're just going to go kind of evenly in a crisscross pattern, drawing these in, and then we'll come back, do the outer bolts, and then we'll torque everything down. And with that, we have our clutch disc, pressure plate, and flywheel sandwich back together, ready to eat. We have our transmission back from our friends over at Bootsy Gear with a fresh LSD, fresh seals, lash set, everything that you could dream of as far as putting an LSD in your G50 goes. We even have a new output seal up front, so we're going to put in our new guide tube now. This is part of our clutch kit. We're just gonna line this baby up. This is such a simple piece to overlook, so I highly recommend you replace it. It also comes with new Phillip head screws that already have some thread locker on them, so you can install them and not worry about everything coming loose. We're just gonna snug up these two Phillips heads. Once they're seated all the way. One quick thing that we're changing with this G50 Trans specifically is we're gonna go with the Spiegel shaft kit. This one comes with some bushings if you have a bell housing that has already been drilled inside for larger bushings. Ours is still had the one-piece shaft in it, so we're just gonna go with the one-piece shaft from the Spiegel kit. We have some new brass fittings to push into our clutch fork. We have a new one. What happens is these tangs tend to wear, and they wear with the old throwout bearing, so you want to replace it whenever doing a clutch job on any car. But we need the brass ones in here, so we're going to push these out. We'll go over to the vise, show you how to get these old ones out, push these new brass ones in. And then once the clutch fork is good to go, we'll lube it up. She's going to take a ride on the throwout bearing here, and it's just a matter of mating the transmission back to the engine while also feeding in the shaft, the shaft for the fork. It's going to be tedious, but I think it should be fine. So real quick, let's head over to the vise, get rid of these old plastic bushings. We have our clutch fork. We have rubber liners on our vise so we don't damage it. We're just going to get this baby nice and snug. And our goal is just to drive out the old bushings without damaging the inner surface of the clutch fork itself. I'm just using an old junk flathead screwdriver. I'm going to get the ends of the bushing started. Now we're going to take our new brass bushings and work those into our clutch fork. There's one. See if we get lucky with the other one. And there's two. Now our clutch fork is ready to rock and roll. I have my Porsche goo. We're gonna get some of this on our fingers, and we're gonna coat the inner sides of the tabs of our throwout bearing. That's where our clutch fork is going to ride. We're gonna get some on the tangs, the tabs, the feeties of that as well on here. And then I like to put a little dab inside of the opening where the end of our slave cylinder rod is going to be living, just to, you know, spread the joy. We're going to pop this baby in place, and this one is just going to hang out here while we get the transmission side of things buttoned up. So now with that, we're going to work on just aligning these two together so they're facing each other. As we get the bell housing up against the block, once we have that pretty close, then we're going to work on getting the shaft through the bell housing and through our clutch fork so that everything is nice and lined up. So it's going to be a little bit tedious, but we should be able to do it no problem. Just make sure your bell housing is nice and clean. And I'm going to take a little bit of grease and just feed some here into the very end where our shaft is going to be riding. Don't need to go crazy, just a small amount will do. Spread it nice and evenly. And we're going to take a very small amount and coat the splines as well. We don't want too much where we're going to have it slinging all over the place, coating the disc and the pressure plate and the flywheel and causing this to not work properly. We just want it enough to help it go in and live its best life. And we're going to do a tiny little dab on the guide tube as well. This is where our throwout bearing is going to be riding on. So you don't want it to be dry, but you don't need it to be, again, a pool party here. We just need it to be nice and coated. All right. Now with that, let's get these two to kiss and go from there. So at this point, we're on the way there to get this in. We're gonna get a second set of hands to kind of just help me lift it up a little bit so it's not riding too much on the studs coming off the block. Then we can kind of just get this baby to pop on. Once it's on, then we can worry about the clutch fork and the shaft tube. So let's try to do that now. All right, more than likely what we're fighting right now is the clutch disc being aligned properly and or not, which is what's keeping us from going in this last little bit. So we're gonna resort to the hardware, just going in very gently, seeing if we can draw it in the rest of the way with the hardware. Obviously, if it feels super tight, then something's not right and we'll back it up, pull the trans off, and then check again. Now we're gonna work on feeding our shaft in. I'm gonna try to keep this clutch fork aligned as best as possible while we go in, keeping the threaded end facing out, as that's gonna be where our locating tab is gonna thread into. This should go in theory, very nice and easy. Should not have to hammer it in or anything like that. A couple taps isn't bad, but having to really pound it in is not the goal. Okay, we're through one side. Okay, we are in, my good people. Let's get our tab in place. Carefully try not to drop this in. We're gonna thread in our bolt and our washer. This is going through the larger hole on our support bracket, the smaller one being for the one on the case, which we had threaded in earlier, as to not lose our place. All right, nice and snug. Really no more than 10 Newton meters for this bolt if you're gonna do a torque wrench on there. And now we have a fully mated transmission with a fresh clutch fork, bushings, shaft, flywheel, clutch disc, pressure plate, all the good stuff needed to make this baby hit the road once more. We're gonna wrap up this DIY here, my good people. That is gonna conclude just the clutch and flywheel DIY portion of this engine out service that we're performing on the 911. Be sure to check out the other videos on the DIY channel if you'd like to see more, especially the engine removal and reinstallation. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments or some good tips for the other good people with the G50 gearboxes out there, leave those in the comment section below. And if you like this DIY and you'd like to see more like them, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.